This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, well, good day, y'all. My name is Broderick. It's the launch of the channel Stories by the Vigilante. Here, a very interesting person, my first guest. Like I said on my other channels, I don't do a good job of introducing myself, so I allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, Brandi.
For sure, enough said.
Short and
So
simple.
for sure, this is gonna be about mental health, and which I think is valuably important. I had some struggles myself, and today I decided she'd be an interesting person to bring on to hear from her perspective. So, without further ado, get into the question. That sounded a little policey, but yeah. So my first question was, how do you define mental health?
So I define mental health about like basically how your mental state is, like what mental state you're in. How do you mentally and emotionally feel? Um, Basically, when I think of mental health, I immediately think about um any kind of past traumas you've been through, or any kind of good highlights in life that you've been through that make you who you are in your mental state.
I agree. I think most people, when they started off, they might think like mental health is all about a negative side of things, whether that's the common ones like anxiety, depression, and stress. But and maybe that is what it is, but there's also some terms that we're going to get into later on in this interview. I think that's going to shed some light on it. So
I also think you got to think about the positive too, because your mental health isn't just the negative parts of your mental mind state. It's also the positive parts that both tie in together.
right, 100%. So does self-care play a role in how you handle your mental health? And if so, which one works best for you? What's method?
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the audio. Sorry about that. All right, you'll just repeat that because it went out for a second.
Yeah, does self-care play a role in improving your mental health? And if so, which one do you use?
Definitely. I think self-care always plays a role in your mental health because you have to take care of self, and your including yourself will include your mental mind state. So some things that I do personally that I think um, plays a part in just resetting your mind is just I read a bit. Sometimes that helps me focus myself. I also write. I always have like a little journal with me. I have one now. Um, and that just helps me like this, like I quantify or put things in different perspectives when I see it actually written out. And I can actually go back to it. That's something that helps my mental health. Self-care, including like my hygiene, making sure that if I'm not feeling my best, I could always just jump up, go get some sunlight, take a nice shower, eat good food, make sure whatever you're consuming and whatever you're putting inside your body is healthy for you, because all that also plays a stake in your mental mind, your mental state. So definitely that's a part of self-care, just making sure that you're eating well, that you're taking care of your body. I've just recently got into going into the gym, so that definitely is something that helps and plays a part, because once you feel better about yourself, your mental state is also in a better perspective as well.
100%. Okay, when you're stressed or you feel anxious, what are some coping strategies that you have?
I deal with anxiety a lot. So certain things that I do when I'm feeling a little anxious is I have to remind myself, and I was just doing this last night. I have to remind myself that like you're okay. Nothing around you, unless you're like in immediate danger, it is a life or death situation. But for the most part, nothing that you're currently going through is going to affect you unless you allow it to. So just always reminding myself that I am okay, like I'm in a safe situation, nothing, I'm not in any kind of immediate danger. And that kind of grounds myself sometimes too. Or even just going outside, being in nature, it's taking a walk, trying to clear off some of the negative emotions that I may be feeling. And also just within my mind state as well, just making sure that I'm not thinking too negatively about myself, or like trying to, or downing myself, because once you start thinking negatively and like you're not thinking positive about yourself, that also plays a part in how you feel about yourself, which is, of course, a part of your mental state. So I like to write. I'll write out my feelings, or I'll just let myself know, have to remind myself that I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm not in any danger, or go get grounded in nature. Those are definitely some things that I do.
Sure. What else getting in there? How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance to support your mental well-being?
Ooh, with work, I definitely separate myself from work to my personal life, because once I start bringing any kind of work into my personal life, where I'm getting off of work and I'm talking about it 24/7. I mean, of course, there's nothing wrong with venting about how your day went, but I try not to dwell. I keep my personal life and my work life completely separate, so I don't cross any boundaries, and I'm not bringing my work life into my personal life, because work can get a little very stressful for, I'm pretty sure, for everybody. They have those bad days where it's just like, I'm so sick of this, or days where it can get very overwhelming, or days where you're super busy and you have all these things on your checklist that you need to get done. But once that the time is over, once it hits 4 or 5 o'clock and it's ready for me to clock out, I have to reset my mind and focus on myself, and focus on my self-care acts, or focus on things that I like to do, or my personal hobbies that separate myself from work. And I try not to take any of my work life, my work issues, my work friendships into my personal life, because you have to keep that barrier separate, so that you're not confusing or bringing your negative emotions or any extra stress from work into your personal life. That's something I had to learn a while ago.
Right. I love that answer, by the way. Let me see.
Yeah, definitely something I practice. I practice leaving my work and my personal life separate, for sure.
I might struggle with this word, so give it some leeway, y'all. How does spirituality, there we go, and religion relate to mental health in your opinion?
For me, I would say, I'm not gonna say like religious and spirituality. Like, I don't practice heavy spirituality like with the zodiac and whatnot, but I definitely believe in God, and I definitely believe in the Bible, and I know within myself, I mean, like, not everybody has the same viewpoint, so not everybody sees it the way I see it. But at the end of the day, I believe in God, and I know that no matter what issues you're laid out with, or what deck of cards in life that you are handed, like, your life was pre-planned. All of our lives was pre-written, you know what I mean? So nothing that you're ever gonna go through, or no mental barriers, changes the way I feel within my spirituality. And I definitely think that when I think of my mental health, because God's never gonna put more on me than I'm able to handle. So I know some things in my life may get very rocky, or some things may get like super overwhelming, and I'm just like, how am I going to get through this? But as long as I have breath, and as long as I have life, I know I have options, and I know I have ways in which I can get things done, or things I can do to figure it out, even if I feel like my back is up against the wall. So I definitely use my belief in God as a way to keep my mental health intact, because I know I'm always going to get through whatever hand, because I always have gotten through every barrier that I've gone through. I've always gotten through it. So that works for me. I know not everybody may be as spiritual or faith-based in a religion, but that's just how I feel.
Have you experienced burnout? And if so, how did you recognize and recover from it?
A burnout, definitely. There's been times where, like I said, like, we've all gotten super overwhelmed with life. And I just feel like, dang, my back is up against the wall. Like, where do I go from here? What do I do? And that's why I just always remind myself to be grounded. To remember that, as long as, like I said, if I'm like not in any immediate danger, I'm not in a life or death situation, know that I'm always going to get past whatever obstacle comes at me. Um, Ways I do that is, like, I go outside, I experience nature, take a few deep breaths, remind myself that I'm okay. look at the sky. I mean, that's something, something I'm always doing. I always catch myself like looking out, especially since I'm out here in Colorado and everything is so beautiful. I just go back to thinking like, dang, God really made a beautiful world. I'm alive. I'm able to experience it. And that's something that has brought me back from quite a few mental breakdowns that I've had in my past. I try to keep myself grounded in nature. That normally helps with me, to be honest with you.
That's what's up. How do you identify and manage triggers that can affect your mental state?
I'm still working on it. Every day is a work in progress for me to understand what my triggers are, but honestly, being able to communicate when I see those triggers happening. When I notice something, or if I can sense myself getting irritated by a certain thing, or if I feel myself getting anxious and around a certain type of situation, take a mental note like, okay, this is something that's happening that I kind of don't like, or I don't like how I'm feeling in this certain situation. So these are things that I need to either try to communicate that I don't like, or try to make sure that I stay away from those type of situations or those type of predicaments or people, so that I don't have those triggers. But it's still something I'm still learning every day, what actually triggers me to have any kind of mental like breakdown or any kind of like mental health crisis. Just being able to learn and communicate what it is that's triggering me. But honestly, that's something I'm working with every single day. I'm not a pro at it. I'm still learning myself. Every day is a learning curve for me, because I'm learning more and more about myself the older I get. So just making sure I'm able to notice when I see things that are triggering me, and then knowing that those are things that I either need to change or communicate or stay away from.
Right. So how do you balance being vulnerable and managing your self protectiveness when sharing your feelings with others?
With that, it's just me learning people and learning their communication styles, because I'm the type of person where when I feel some type of way, I have to learn how to address it. Like, there's nothing wrong with addressing how you feel, but I'm learning about myself that I have certain ways, at least with my tone of voice and things like that, or how I communicate when I'm frustrated or when I'm feeling any type of way, and I with a certain person, and I feel like I have to bring it to their attention so that we can move forward and nobody's harboring any negative emotions. Just learning how to communicate with that specific person or scenario, whether it's with work or whether it's with personal relationships. For me, as long as I know how like to talk to people, because I think that's really big. You have to also remember, like, you don't ever want to just dump on anybody how you feel. Number one, not knowing their emotional state at that current moment, not knowing where their emotional mind state is at, but also not knowing like maybe me coming so abrasive isn't the best way, or sometimes you have to lean into certain type of conversations just so that they're able to understand and take in what you're saying as well. So for me, it's just learning the person that I'm speaking to, learning how to read the room, and knowing like how to express myself and how to go about harboring or getting off any emotion that I'm feeling without feeling like we're going to leave the conversation in a negative light, or somebody's going to not fully understand how I'm feeling, and that can kind of clash and start arguments. So that's how I work on it, just being able to communicate and talk it out, or learn the communication style of the person that I'm talking to.
I agree 100%, because me, like you said, as we get older, you learn things, and communication is extremely key to any relationship that you have with anybody. Like, I can say that something I learned probably this year was any type of discussion I had and it started to go a negative way, I thought the person wasn't being genuine or forthcoming with the truth. I would really try to press that button to get them to see where they were wrong at, the error in their ways. And what I learned was that's kind of selfish. Like, at the end of the day, like you said, life is a learning process. We're all going to learn things, especially me, somebody with a son, you know, you're talking about communication styles and stuff. He's not gonna have the same wherewithal and how he sees life and communicate it back to me the same way me at 28 is going to.
Exactly.
But it's a learning process. But yeah, so
Definitely. And
for
I've
sure.
also learned another thing that ties into that. I also learned not to kind of assume people's emotions, because I could assume before going into a conversation that you're going to have, or that you're not going to understand what I'm saying, or that you're not going to fully listen to me. But learning not to assume that about people, and instead, in a kind and of course respectable way, get how you feel off your chest, but also not to assume that you can't do that, or that you can't be honest with people based on how you think they're going to react. So that's a big thing too that I'm learning as well.
Right. Me too. Um, how do relationships and social support systems affect your mental well-being?
um I definitely think how can I word what I'm gonna say? Can you just repeat that question one more time? Let me get my words together.
How do the relationships you have with people, including your social support system, affect your mental well-being?
I definitely think just making sure that I have genuine people around me that are open to actually understanding how people are as a person, that's a big thing for me. So making sure that like my social circle are people who are genuine, and people who are open to not being so one-minded, because you can get so focused on how you were raised and how you communicate that you're not open to understanding how everybody else receives or expresses themselves. So my biggest thing is making sure that the people around me, the people that I surround myself with, are people who understanding of who I actually am, and not just have like a preconceived notion about how I should receive information. If I'm feeling a certain type of way, or if I have an emotion that I want to express, I like to make sure that the people around me don't fully focus on the tone and how it's which is coming out. Like if because I can become a very passionate person when I go to speak, or when I'm talking
Mhm.
about something I really care about. I can be very passionate, and my passion can sometimes come off as being upset or being angry or being frustrated. But making sure that the people around me understand that I'm not coming from that type of light. I'm not trying to come off in any negative way. They just understand that this is how I am as a person, and this is how I talk. Like that is something that is important to me when with who I choose to surround myself with. Because once I feel like I'm communicating with people that I feel like I love, or that I feel like I'm okay with being my true passionate self, and how I communicate and how I talk to people, once I feel like I'm misunderstood, I start to kind of back away, and that affects my mental health, in which I feel like I can communicate and be open with people. So just making sure that the people I surround myself with are people that fully understand or want to understand me as an actual person, instead of being closed-minded in how they feel and how they see the world, so that they're not able to recognize other people's learning or communication styles.
What strategies what strategies do you use to create a positive self-image and improve your self-esteem?
Which charges do I use to
Create,
what are you gonna say? I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna, I thought you were repeating the question. Oh, you didn't hear what I
Oh,
said.
no, I can hear. I'm sorry.
You're good.
For me, I that's a good question. These are things I don't think about on a daily, so interesting. Um, for me, I make sure I keep up with like my 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 self-care. My self-care is definitely something that makes my self-image make myself comfortable when I'm expressing myself in my image. So making sure I keep up with my self-care. Honestly, I've just gotten back into getting into the gym recently. I kind of stopped after my sister's wedding for a while, but I actually just wrote that in my journal today, something I want to get back into doing. Um, keeping a routine in how I move every single day. Of course, I don't follow my same routine every day because every day is a different day and things come up and things change. But definitely try to keep a routine, trying to keep myself on a schedule. Also just making sure that I feel comfortable within myself. Those are a couple of things that I make sure I think about it daily when I'm thinking about my self-image and how I maintain it.
Also, for the people who are watching this, it's okay if you don't have the answer. Like, of course, she's giving a great answer. And of course, she has a lot of maturity to herself, but it's okay if you don't have the answers. Like, if you hear me ask these questions and you're self-reflecting on your own journey, it's okay to recognize that you're still going through and being part of the journey. Before, you start thinking about it like, wow, I'm not there yet. Like, sometimes it's going to take the majority of your life to get to a certain place where you're comfortable with your insecurities and being vulnerable, your self-image and things of that nature, what you portray to the world. Because a lot of times, I don't think that's something that, well, I can't really say that, but a lot of us do think about the image we portray to the world, and a lot of us don't think about it. You just think you're being generally yourself, and doing that, you can close your mind off to what people actually think about you, because a lot of people want to hide behind the fact that, or the thought process that, oh, I don't care what people think about me, when that's honestly not true. I think majority of us care what people think about us, but that's a coping mechanism that people use. And ooh, give me one sec. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, that's definitely true. There's nothing wrong with not knowing sometimes because we're all still learning ourselves. So as long as you're honest on where you are in your journey, like that's the best thing you can do, in my opinion.
Right. So okay, not that one. Are there any techniques that have been passed down to you to deal with your mental health? Like any cultural things?
To deal with what? I'm sorry.
Your mental health. Like, was meditation and things like that big in your family, or circles to
Honestly,
talk
it
about your
wasn't.
feelings?
Honestly, it wasn't. I would say that's a good question because there's nothing that I could really think of that I could say that was passed down to me within my family because I grew up in a family where like nobody really wanted to communicate how they really felt or what was really going on. Like things would get brushed under the rug and we moved past it. So I didn't really come from a background of like great communications. Um, so yeah, it's nothing really I could think about. Honestly, I've been learning. I've gone through a lot in my life, so it's like everything that I've gone through, I've taken it as a lesson. Um, and that's really where I learned my skills from. But I can't say that there's nothing that I could think of off the top of my head that I've learned or that's been passed down in my family.
I think to that response, like this next question leads right into it, because I do think it affects a shared culture that we have, which is, in your opinion, what are some misconceptions about the relationship with mental health in the Black community or African American community?
That's a great question. I think it's a lot of things that I've heard or that I've dealt with firsthand with growing up in the family and the area that I grew up in is nobody really feels comfortable on actually speaking on how they feel. Or being comfortable instead of just brushing things under the rug. I think it's definitely something that we need to get into as a community is just making sure that people feel heard. Because it's very easy to just brush things under the rug and to not actually address how you feel. But that's how you build a bunch of resentment, and that's how you build like negative negative connotations on life in general. So I definitely is just giving people the space to actually be themselves and teaching proper communication skills and teaching proper ways to cope with negative things that's happened in your life or that you're going through. So that instead of harboring negative emotions and harboring negative feelings about yourself, or about the environment that you're in or just the world in general, not being able to process that information or not being able to be given the space to process information or to process your feelings is definitely things that I've seen growing up all throughout my life that not only myself but like my family members and friends have dealt with. So they don't feel heard or they don't feel like they have the space to actually be themselves and to actually speak their minds, whether it's based on how they feel or just their mental health, because it's so easy to write off somebody as being crazy or not being in the proper mind state. And sometimes people just don't want to hear that. They want to actually feel heard, no matter what it is. So I definitely think that's something that should be worked on within the community so that growing up, our kids are free to express themselves in the way that they should and don't have to feel like they have to be walking on eggshells about how they feel and what's on their mind.
Right. So in finality, what advice would you give young African American women who might be struggling with mental health challenges but are hesitant to speak up about it?
Find somebody that you feel like you could genuinely talk to. I know it's easier said than done because it's still days where I feel like I don't have people that I can communicate with, but I know I have family and I have good friends in my circle that I feel like when I'm feeling a certain type of way. But even if you don't have like a good support system, write. I like to write. I keep a journal around and I always jot down my feelings. But definitely trying to find a support system of respectable people is definitely helpful, because once you have a support system and you as a young woman need help with navigating life and need help with decisions to make, it's definitely a lot easier instead of trying to figure everything out on your own, because you always need help in life, no matter what anybody says. Everybody needs help at least once, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether it's just having a listening ear and somebody to support you. So I know it's easier said than done to have a tribe of good people around you, but try not to just close yourself off, because I'm learning within myself not to be so closed off and not allowing people in and not allowing people to actually fully like understand me and get to know me. But once you do, it opens up a world of support. So that's definitely something I think I would want to hear from somebody as a young adult, or even if it's somebody my age. That's a lot of support that I like to hear. Just making sure that you have a good set of people around you, so that not only you can vent to, you have somebody to help, and you can help them as well. Because no matter where you are in your journey, there's always somebody who hasn't gone through what you're going through, or somebody that is going through what you're going through. That you can always have a listening ear, and you guys can always bounce ideas or bounce feelings off of, and somebody that you, so that you don't have to hold on to everything. You can have somebody to listen to and that you're there for vice versa. That's what I'm learning now, because I'm learning to have a good support system around me with good people who have good intentions for me and who aren't faking how they actually feel. So once you have a good support system around you, it makes life 10 times easier.
Right. I totally agree. But, this has been fun. I appreciate you coming on. Very introspective. I answered a lot of questions about myself and actually created new questions, which I'm kind of excited about going forward. Um, Also, check out Miss Brandi's business, which she can tell you a little bit about here.
So I have a few things I'm working on. Hair as well, something I'm very passionate about. Braiding. So I can leave you with my username if you want to share that as well for everybody. You can go
I'll
look at
put in
some
the
of the work that I
description.
do. Yes, that's something I'm working on. I also have a small Airbnb cleaning service that I'm trying to get off the ground as well. Majority where I am right now in the Colorado area, but hopefully I can expand back to South Florida and see how that goes. So those are two things that I'm working on that I can share that would love support on.
And I'll include that information in the description. But it's been fun. I thank you again, and it's been good.
Of course,
Thank
it was
you.
good night.
Right.
Thank you. I'm always interested to talk. So whenever you have any more questions, you can shoot them at me, and I'm happy to help or provide some additional introspection.
For sure, I appreciate that. Let me see.